What happens when a man who clawed his way up from nothing gets a second chance? Not in the same broken world, but in a brand new one with a title, a cheat item, and absolutely zero intention of playing it safe. This is the story of Ron Broccoli, Baron of Riverbend, and the most dangerous man in the frontier nobody sees coming. In his previous life, he went by a different name entirely. He was self-made, an orphan boy raised by his grandmother until she passed, then left completely alone in the world. No inheritance, no connections, no safety net. He dropped out of school, picked up construction work, ran businesses, went broke when a trusted partner stabbed him in the back, then built everything back up from rubble. He made it, real money, real freedom, the kind of life most people only dream about. Then a truck hit him on the way home, and he woke up somewhere else entirely. The Tylon continent, year 1580. Medieval Europe. If medieval Europe had battle energy, dragons, elves, and magic running through its veins, he had taken over the body of Ron Broccoli, second son of Baron Broccoli, a minor noble house built on the power of a broccoli sprite. Not exactly the most intimidating family name in the realm, but the family itself was real, and the opportunities were real. The original Ron had genuine talent for battle energy training, and had been sent to serve under the Marigold Knight Order for years prior. He trained hard, rose to low-rank squire, and was standing right on the edge of the next level. Then a border war broke out between two duchies and changed everything. The original Ron fought well, earned merit, got caught in an ambush, broke through to mid-rank squire in the heat of combat, and somehow dragged Viscount Evan, the Marquis' eldest son, to safety. The effort killed him. That's when the man from the other world arrived. He absorbed the original Ron's memories and language like breathing in air, so no one suspected a thing. He lay in a frontline tent recovering from wounds, running breathing techniques, eating enormous meals, and trying to figure out exactly what he'd landed in. He also found something floating in his mind, a blood jade gourd, a trinket from his old life, picked up during some shady antique deal, and apparently the reason he survived the crossing at all. He didn't have time to study it yet. First came a visitor. Viscount Evan arrived at the tent, a chubby man in his 30s with a round face, a big beard, and a warm smile that looked like it had never left his face. He told Ron the war was ending, the Bronze Duchy had won, and the Grand Duke was handing out pioneer noble titles as rewards. The Marquis had slots available, and Evan was giving one to Ron, a pioneer baron title, a piece of land outside the border, drawn on a map, handed to a man with a sword and told to go make something out of it. The death rate was brutal, but it was real land with a real title attached. High-rank squires twice Ron's age would have sold their armor for that chance. Ron got it at 18 because he came from a noble family, saved the Marquis heir, and had already broken to mid-rank squire, which meant a shot at becoming a full knight someday. The Marigold family was betting on his future. He nearly lost his mind with excitement. In this world, the power structure runs through dragons and elves. Dragons produce metal ores and magic metals. Elves grow plants and magic herbs. Nobles control both. Knights and mages need noble patrons to advance. Nobles need knights to survive. A full knight is considered serious combat power anywhere on the continent, and swear loyalty to a lord and you get at minimum a landed barony. Most small noble families only have squire-level fighters serving them. A real knight is a rare asset, and to build a kingdom, you need a dragon. Ron rode home the same day, and Baron Henry Broccoli's reply came back full of barely contained pride. The Broccoli family had existed for only 150 years. Founded by a squad leader who earned his title in battle and built everything from one sprite and 3 spirit bugs. Now, after all that time, the family was about to have its second baron. Ron lay back in his tent and thought, not bad at all. Last life he started with nothing. This life he woke up as a noble son with a title on the way. Sure, he'd have to fight for it, but when had he ever been afraid of that? After the conflict ended, he followed the Knight Order back to the Marquis territory. Healed up well thanks to potions and training. He finally had something he hadn't had since arriving, privacy. And that meant it was time to figure out the blood jade gourd. He tested it methodically. Blood didn't trigger it. Opening the lid showed nothing inside, but pushing battle energy into it made it react. After days of quiet experimenting, the answer came together. It was a monster refining pot. Feed it raw meat and flesh, and it breaks them down into a thick blood-red liquid. Took dozens of pounds to get a single drop, and he wasn't stupid enough to test it on himself first. He caught a rat and fed it a drop instead. The rat swelled to double its size, muscles bulging in every direction, then exploded. Dead, but the effect was unmistakably clear. Over the days he bought loads of meat and ran animal tests quietly. Reaching a conclusion, the liquid strengthens the body and heals injuries. Plants and grain could be refined too, but the results weren't worth much. He diluted the liquid carefully and used it on himself. His body hit a peak it had never reached before. Mid-rank squire's strength, fully consolidated in days instead of months. Feeling that energy surged through him, something wild stirred in his chest. He was never a calm man in his previous life. And this world, with supernatural powers, a cheat item in his pocket, and a barony on the way, felt even better than before. Then one night, a nervous little maid knocked on his door. The madam wanted to meet him at the usual place tomorrow evening. Ron's stomach dropped. He dug through the original Ron's memories and found the ones he'd skimmed past, because they hadn't seemed important. Turns out the original Ron had been a complete dog since age 16, visiting every brothel in the territory, seducing noble ladies, and a year ago, beginning a secret affair with Lady Irena Narcissus, the wife of Viscount Evan, the man who had just handed Ron a barony. His brain was a mess. Still, he went. The next evening, a secluded courtyard, thin curtains, dim lamplight. Lady Irena, late 20s, pale skin, stunning face, eyes full of intent, and a feverish flush on her cheeks. She was a graduate of the Duchess Knight Academy with battle energy of her own, so she could handle the encounter just fine. Afterward, lying there in the quiet, she let something slip. She had personally pushed for Ron to receive the Pioneer Barony. Made sense. If Evan had died in that ambush, she'd have lost her position as Viscountess and her future as a Marchioness. Saving Evan had saved her entire comfortable life. Ron slipped out late that night, slightly amused, and kept it moving. Over the following weeks, he continued refining liquids secretly, his body growing stronger every day, and visited the lady a few more times. By the end, she could barely walk straight. When Evan finally called him to meet the Marquis and receive his war rewards, Evan introduced Ron to every noble in the room, calling him Baron Broccoli and praising his talent and bravery. Ron smiled modestly and thought to himself that he had been pretty brave the night before too. After the audience, two other knights joined him for the journey to the capital. They traveled to Adrian, Bronze Duchy's capital, and Ron walked out of the ceremony a real baron. Official title, official seal, official weight of the world on his shoulders. He didn't walk back alone. Dozens of carts followed behind him, loaded with spears, iron swords, bows, armor, and farming tools, all bought in the capital where metal prices were lowest. He took out the maximum loan available to pioneer nobles, 2,000 gold dragons, and spent it with purpose. The Grand Duke had included the spirit bugs with the title, a wheat bug and a dandelion bug, the latter producing magic herbs to supply knights with training potions. Ron spent 1,500 gold at the spirit bug market and bought two more, a sweet potato bug and a black rye bug, both ideal for survival farming. Lady Irena had quietly slipped him 500 gold to make the purchase possible. He picked up people along the way. Hartlendl, a solid mid-rank squire close to 30, down on his luck but experienced. Dick Curtin, a rich merchant's son whose father donated 200 gold dragons for the privilege of calling him a squire. He also bought craftsmen among the war prisoners, blacksmiths, carpenters, masons, bricklayers, people who could build something from nothing. Then he went home to squeeze more resources out of his family. Baron Henry Broccoli had everything ready. The whole family turned out. Oliver the older brother, his mother Gwen, little sister Ella already showing much talent, and sister-in-law Sophia. Dealing with people who believed he was their real son and brother was nerve-wracking. But Ron watched every word and leaned on the original Ron's memories to get through it. A banquet followed, and it wasn't just family. Every knight sworn to the Broccoli house, every friendly noble, and all their younger sons and spare heirs filled the hall. Ron circled the room all night, sizing up every face, figuring out who was worth taking north. That same night his father called him into the study. 5,000 gold dragons, he announced. 2 as a gift and 3 as a loan, more than the family earned in a year. Every coin bet on his youngest son. He also offered for spirit bugs, 1 magic herb bug or 3 farming bugs. Ron took the herb bug without hesitation. He already had farming bugs. What he needed for the frontier were knights, and knights needed potions. His father gave him 30 veteran soldiers, 10 craftsmen, a talented town administrator named Perrinwheel, and permission to recruit from every family he met at the banquet. Ron thanked him, promised not to let the family down, and felt the quiet thrill of a man who knew exactly what he was building. The wheels ground over gravel for over 2 weeks as the caravan pushed north. Farmland disappeared, replaced by waist-high wild grass and bare gray rock. The temperature dropped steadily. The sky grew wider. They reached the Skyfall Mountains, a massive range cutting the continent in half. Civilization to the south, frontier land to the north. At the Broken Blade Pass, old arrowheads were still stuck in the rock walls and dried bloodstains darkened the stone. The place reeked of old battles and slow rot. Ron asked his administrator Perrin what dangers to expect. The old man pushed up his copper-rimmed glasses and delivered the answer plainly. Not just bandits. The frontier has no real law. Criminals from every nation hide out there. Some bandit gangs run 700 or 800 strong, enough to storm a castle. Lords get killed here every year. And beyond the human threats, there are monster clans, powerful magic beasts and orc-raiding parties. Ron filed all of it away and kept his face neutral. He'd lay low at first, figure out the landscape, and not draw unnecessary attention. Lauren Onion, a veteran mid-rank squire in his 30s who'd spent years as a frontier mercenary before coming home, rode beside his carriage for most of the journey. During rest stops, Ron kept feeding beast meat into the refining pot from their hunting trips, and his battle energy reserves grew denser with every day. His body was already as strong as a high-rank squire's, even if his actual rank hadn't caught up yet. 3 days after crossing the Green River, Oak City appeared on the horizon. Built from massive oak logs and gray stone, walls over 10 meters high, flying the Bronze Duchy's brass dragon crest alongside the Mammon family's Black Wolf emblem. Marquis Mammon ran the city. It was the northern hub where all new pioneer lords had to register. Ron handed his papers to the gate captain, slipped him a gold dragon, and the man brightened immediately. He entered the city with a few squires. The streets smelled like ale, sweat, and animal dung. Drunk mercenaries bragged outside pubs. People gambled with dice in corners. At the Lord's Manor, a stiff-faced official in a wig checked his documents and unrolled a huge map on the desk. He pointed to the far western edge of the frontier, north of the Green River. Riverbend Domain on the Greenwood Plains, roughly 30 kilometers on each side. Blackstone Mountains to the east. To territories west of him was the coast. The land was barely marked on the map, a few vague terrain features and a lot of empty space. Ron learned the rules. For the first year, no noble could attack a new pioneer lord. That was Marquis Mammon's law, enforced by a recorder stationed in his territory. After 1 year, keeping the land was his own problem. After 3 years, duchy officials would come to confirm his territory size. The message was clear: expand north as much as possible before then. He walked out of the manor holding a bronze token of authority, already thinking about logistics. With that token, he could claim 1,000 serfs at half price from the duchy's pioneer support package. Standing in the street, Ron felt something he hadn't let himself feel in a while. Pure, uncomplicated excitement. Barren from day one, a cheat item in his pocket, land under his name. He wanted to shout it to the sky. The next morning he bought grain and supplies in Oak City, picked up his 1,000 serfs, and hit the road before sunrise. 3 days later, he arrived at his land for the first time. Late summer wind carrying the smell of wild grass across his face. Endless plains stretching to the horizon. A branch of the Green River winding through the lowlands like a silver ribbon. Lauren had already scouted the area with 2 guards and pointed to a raised hill to the northeast. Flat on top, good view for the kilometers in every direction, hard ground below for driving stakes, and close to water. A natural cliff covered in thorny bushes blocked the rear. Open grassland stretched in front of it where nothing could sneak up unseen. Good spot. Ron told Perrin to get the serfs clearing 200 meters of ground and cutting trees for a temporary fence immediately. He made the motivation simple: if the fence wasn't standing by dark, the bread ration got cut in half. That got them moving. While the serfs worked, Ron took Lauren and hard upstream along the river. Shallow water, smooth pebbles, silver fish darting in the current. About a mile up they found the rotting remains of an old cabin, abandoned for years. Weeds growing waist-high around broken clay bowls. Earlier settlers who hadn't made it. But the soil along that river bank was richer than anything nearby, with wild wheat already growing in patches. Ron made a mental note and rode back. By the time they returned, the fence was halfway up, hundreds of leg-thick logs pounded into the dirt, gaps filled with sharpened branches woven tight. Rough, but solid. Then trouble came early. At the northwest corner of the fence, a cluster of serfs stood frozen around something on the ground. A pile of fresh bones, still dark with flesh scraps. A shredded leather shield nearby with a claw mark the size of a human palm. Troll claws. An older serf had seen them before. These things can rip a cow apart. The bones were no more than 3 days old. Ron told Perrin to speed everything up and get the gate installed now. He sent 2 men to warn Hart's timber crew not to stay in the woods past dark. Hart came back before sunset with a full cart of bark and timber, and to deer killed at the forest edge. He also reported goblin tracks deeper in the woods and hadn't pushed further. Lauren examined the troll claw print and his face went grim. Fresh. The thing was still nearby. They worked through the night. By full dark, the fence was done. The heavy wooden gates locked with thick timber bars. For watchtowers stood at the corners with torches blazing on top. The serfs crammed into makeshift shelters, nobody talking, just listening to howls echoing across the plains. In a hastily built hut that night, Ron spread the map on a table and made his priorities clear. Perrin would manage construction toward a proper manner. Dick would handle supply tracking. Tomorrow, Ron would take the knights out to explore the full territory and drive out whatever was lurking nearby. Lauren suggested he lead the scouting party while Ron stayed safe, especially with the trolls still out there. Ron turned him down. Splitting forces made things worse, not better. They'd all go together. At dawn he rode out with Lauren and the guards, leaving Dick behind to manage the serfs. That kid had a talent for ordering people around that Ron found genuinely useful. The goblins showed up first, ugly things with pumpkin-sized heads and rusty knives, chattering out of the trees like they owned the place. Ron said one word, shoot. 3 dropped with arrows in them. The rest scrambled back into the brush. 3 miles north, the river forked into a swamp. Dark green algae startled waterbirds. Wild ducks thick in the reeds. Ron noticed the flatland beside the swamp more than the water itself. Dark brown, sticky soil. Perfect for wheat. He had the guards plant a marker and noted it for Perrin. On the way back through a low pine forest, they ran into Knoll hyena men tearing apart a dead buffalo. The Knolls turned on them with red eyes. Ron drew his sword, battle energy glowing faint red along the blade, and called out positions. Lauren's blade moved like a snake and finished 3 in quick succession. The rest fled into the pines. This forest needed clearing before any farms could go up nearby. They found a hilltops perfect for watchtowers and a slope of clay soil good for making bricks. When they returned at sunset, the camp had transformed. Dick had driven the serfs hard all day. A half-height stone wall now ringed the outside of the wooden fence. He came bouncing over like a rabbit, bragging about every detail. He'd even burned mugwort in Ron's cabin to keep the mosquitoes out. Perrin reported the granary frame was up, but the serfs were exhausted. Ron gave them a half-hour rest and an extra loaf of black bread for dinner. Watching the serfs kowtow in gratitude while Dick screamed about the Lord's generosity, Ron thought to himself that he needed a better way to motivate these people. Over the next 5 days he fell into a rhythm. Mornings clearing monsters with the guards, afternoons checking construction, evenings reviewing the numbers with Perrin. On the 5th day he stood in front of a finished manor compound and felt real satisfaction. For the first time, 500 meters on each side, thick log walls sunk deep in the ground, a half-meter trench outside with sharpened branches lining the top, to massive oak trunk gates with a heavy crossbar behind them. The Broccoli family crest hung above the entrance. Inside, everything organized. East side for Ron and the knights, west side for the serfs. Their grass shelters replaced with basic wooden huts. Center, granary and blacksmith shop standing side by side. Drainage ditches dug throughout. Looking at the open land west of the manor, thousands of acres of untouched ground waiting. Ron gave Perrin new orders. Starting the next morning, teams of 50 serfs. Top 3 workers per team earn merit points and public recognition. 10 points earns free citizen status and the right to claim farmland. Last place loses half their dinner. He didn't mind serfs becoming free citizens. Even free, they wouldn't leave. They'd still work his land, grow his food, live under his protection, free or not. They were still his. The first big job was clearing farmland west of the manor. They set fire to the wild grass and brush, a controlled burn that lasted a full day. Flames eating through everything, killing deep roots, turning it all to ash. Once it cooled, serfs moved in with hoes, breaking the charred crust to reach the rich brown soil underneath. Dick stomped along the field edges, screaming at anyone who slowed down. Ron opened 5 jade boxes, each holding a sleeping spirit bug and its companion spirit grass. He planted them in the fields closest to the manor, packed jade stone and gold powder round each one to feed them through the stress of transplanting. The moment the rose spirit grass went into the ground, the bug stirred awake, crawled to his hand, and started nibbling gold. Ron felt its happiness through the contract bond. Once full, it crawled back onto the grass, spread its tiny wings, flew to circles, and the surrounding earth lit up with a faint pink-purple glow, the sweet smell of magic, settling over 100 acres. Those 100 acres would produce 4 times what serfs could grow on normal land. Within 2 days, seeds were already sprouting. But a problem appeared quickly. Even with the motivation system boosting morale, there weren't enough hands. Construction and farming needed the same people at the same time. Ron sent Hart to Oak City with 1,000 gold dragons to buy more serfs. His funds were draining fast, already down to 3,000 and dropping. After the spirit grass had 2 days to settle, he had the bugs collected back into their jade boxes. Placed in a specially built spirit house with moisture-proof walls, plants the bugs enjoyed, and maids assigned to feed them jade powder daily. With farming underway, Ron finally had time for what he'd really been waiting for, hunting. He took the squires out to clear monsters from around the manor, The frontier was crawling with kobolds, gnolls, and goblins, the three pest creatures that breed faster than humans, grow fully in 2 or 3 years, and are impossible to tame. They destroy crops, steal food, and in large numbers they attack settlements. For most lords, they were a headache. For Ron, they were free raw material. He had the serfs dig a large pit inside the manor. The squires dumped every monster corpse into it, layered with firewood. Dick asked why they were bothering with creatures nobody eats instead of leaving them in the wild. Ron didn't answer. He whipped him a few times instead. A lord doesn't explain himself to subordinates on his own land. Once everyone had cleared out, he jumped into the pit alone, fed every corpse into the refining pot, then lit the firewood to cover his tracks. Over the following days, the squires brought back dozens of bodies daily, and the pot accumulated nearly half a cup of the red liquid. His body had already reached high-rank squire level in raw physical strength, but his battle energy reserves hadn't caught up yet. He'd been drinking magic potions like water to speed up the cycle, and combined with the refining pot's liquid pushing his body forward, the loop finally completed. He broke through to high-rank squire. He kept it secret immediately. A man without hidden cards doesn't sleep well. The new serf's heart had bought in Oak City arrived, over 1,000 of them. Ron organized everything into 5 farming settlements, each with a designated land area, a spirit bug covering it, and a quota system that made the reward structure crystal clear. The fires went up again across the plains, nearly 100 brush piles lit simultaneously, smoke turning half the sky gray-black. When it was over, nothing remained but charred ground ready for tilling. Then Ron went to the guard barracks. He doubled the pay of his 30 veteran soldiers, handed Lauren a copy breathing technique, and told them the method stayed inside the barracks. He officially named Lauren as guard captain, and all 30 men dropped to their knees, swearing to serve him until death. Good, these men were his core fighting force. Making them stronger made the territory safer. He also told Lauren to start picking 50 new recruits from the serfs. Anyone with good merit records, quick hands, and strong bodies. Then Perrin came with bad news. They were down to just over 1,000 gold dragons, and the first harvest was still far away. Grain would need to keep coming. Metal supplies would run out after outfitting new serfs with farming tools. Perrin mentioned timber and hunting magic beast as potential income. Ron dismissed both for now, too many complications, too few people to spare. Then Hart came back from a scouting assignment with something unexpected in his hand. A chunk of salt rock, scraped from under gravel at a rocky area Ron had passed during patrol. High purity, edible without refining, a small deposit, but enough to last the territory long-term and sell the surplus to passing caravans. This changed everything. Ron sent Lauren with 20 guards to secure the site immediately, and had Hart bring 50 serfs to build a road connecting it to Cattle Village. He gave one strict order: tell everyone they were quarrying stone. Nobody mentioned salt. On the ride back that evening, the sunset painted the Clearwater River gold and red. Then Lauren spotted a group on the far bank. A big middle-aged man in silver-trimmed leather armor on a black horse, a potato emblem on his banner, and 30 guards trailing behind him. The man noticed them too. Raised his right hand, the standard frontier greeting between lords. Ron nodded back, too far apart to see faces clearly, but he could feel the man's presence even at distance. One of the stranger's knights whispered something. The man shook his head, gave a respectful gesture, and rode on until his column disappeared into the horizon. Lauren identified him quietly. Lord Boris of Riverside Territory to the west. Word was he'd attacked a neighbor the year before and grabbed significant land. Ambitious man. Ron filed that away and kept riding home. The recruitment notice went out and the 50 new guard spots filled immediately. The serfs were desperate for the chance. Now they were out in the training yard shirtless, swinging wooden spears while Lauren walked between the rows smacking anyone with bad form. Ron stood by the watchtower watching them, eager, but no foundation. Lauren said half a year to turn them into real fighters. Ron told him half a year was too long. Perrin brought the books, 2,237 gold dragons remaining, and that money had to stretch until harvest. The salt mine and brick kilns couldn't start yet. Every serf was locked into farm construction. Ron told Perrin to pull everyone off non-essential manor work and concentrate entirely on getting the 5 settlements operational. Food and shelter first, everything else waits. The encounter with Lord Boris by the river still nagged at him. He told Lauren to send people out to gather information on all surrounding lords, especially Boris and the Green Lake Territory Boris had attacked the previous year. Then a blood-covered serf came stumbling in from Sweet Potato Village, barely able to speak. Magic Beast Tiger attack. Ron drew his sword and rode out with Lauren. When they reached the settlement, 3 serfs lay dead outside the fence, throats torn by claws. A guard pointed toward the oak forest. white fur, fast as wind. A wind shadow tiger, a mid-rank magic beast with white fur that shoots wind blades from its mouth. Even a solid mid-rank squire would struggle against one. Ron sent for the squires from other settlements and organized a search teams, pushing into the forest with shields raised. 100 meters in, Lauren raised his hand. Through the bushes, a pair of green eyes stared out of the shadows. The tiger pounced. One white blur, and the first new guard lost his head before he could lift his shield. A wind blade followed, slicing another guard clean in half. Hart threw himself shield first into the beast and knocked it sideways. Lauren charged in. The guards completed the encirclement. The tiger crouched low, snarling, looking for an escape. Ron moved fast, sword trailing faint red battle energy, and struck its paw. It howled and tried to run, but Lauren pinned its hind leg. Ron gave the order, and the guards swarmed in. Dozens of spears punched through its body. The wind shadow tiger died screaming. The fur and crystal core would sell. The flesh was beneficial for battle energy training. Ron had half the meat cooked and distributed to the knights and guards with battle energy cultivation. The other half went into the refining pot. Magic beast liquid turned out to be different from regular monster extract. It contained traces of magic power that helped the body adapt to battle energy faster, basically reducing the need for expensive potions. This attack made one thing clear. The territory's defenses were still far too weak. So Ron came up with a quiet solution. He mixed small amounts of the refined liquid into flour, rolled it into pills, and had the kitchen drop 2 into the knights and guards' meat soup every day. Nothing dramatic, just a slow, steady improvement that nobody would notice or question. Half a month passed and the territory was starting to look like something real. 3 brick kilns running day and night, black smoke pouring into the sky. 5 farming settlements mostly built. A proper quota system replacing the need for constant whipping. The plan was to replace every wooden fence with brick walls, starting with the manor. Then each settlement in order. The salt operation was also up and running. Over 100 pounds of clean white salt per day. Then intelligence came back from the surrounding lords. To the east, Baron Horson of Blackstone, a lame old knight mining obsidian, no conflict. To the southwest, Baron Austin of Green Lake, beaten by Boris the previous year and forced to pay 3 spirit bugs as ransom. His territory half-wrecked and his confidence broken. Austin was looking for allies against Boris. And then there was Boris himself, second son of a knight family, traveled different kingdoms as a young man, earned military merit in war, married a count's daughter. 5 years ago he came to the frontier and built a proper castle, growing steadily more powerful and aggressive with every year. Here was the problem. Ron's territory, and a new lord to the north, had just boxed in Boris's expansion routes. That's why Boris had been scouting along the river. He was picking which new territory to hit after the first-year protection period ended. During the protection year, Boris wouldn't attack openly, but he could sabotage, slow development down, and then strike once the year was up. Ron told Perrin to prepare gifts and send someone to Green Lake territory with a trade offer. Perrin caught on immediately. One more friend meant one less direction to worry about. On the training field, the 30 veteran guards were already showing results. After 2 weeks of breathing technique training plus the secret liquid in their daily soup, nearly half of them had begun gathering a warm ball of battle energy in their bellies. The very first seed of a beginner squire. The 50 new guards recruited from serfs weren't ready for cultivation yet, but another couple weeks of meat soup should bring their bodies to baseline. They were already starting to look like soldiers. One of the 5 family squires, Grachev, had an energy seed almost the size of a pigeon egg. He was about to become the territory's next mid-rank squire. Ron stood on the porch looking over the kilns, the guards, the fields, and let himself think. Not bad for a few weeks of work. But Boris was out there, and the clock was ticking. Hart came back with a reply from Green Lake territory. Baron Austin agreed to trade and included a detailed list of Boris's knights along with the letter. Riverside territory had to high-rank squires, Boris himself and his guard captain, a man named Locke, plus from mid-rank squires. Solid strength for a frontier baron. Hart explained that Locke had been the reason Green Lake lost the year before. A fresh breakthrough nobody had expected. Austin had never left his castle to fight in the open again since. The letter also had basic intelligence on Riverside. Over 8,000 people, a castle, 2 small towns, multiple farms, compared to a territory not yet 2 months old. Ron was badly outmatched in a straight fight. But the situation had a useful angle. Austin's Green Lake territory had been established for over 10 years and sat on the only port in this stretch of the frontier. He'd gotten rich off trade and used to bully Boris by squeezing his trade routes. No wonder Boris had come for him once he was strong enough. Rich and weak was a dangerous combination out here. Austin was trying to get Ron to stand between him and Boris. Smart old fox. Ron told Hart to give Grachev 10 bottles of magic potion from storage. That kid was right on the edge. 5 days later, the brick walls were finished and brick replacements had started at the settlements too. Lauren had the guards digging trenches around the walls with sharpened stakes at the bottom. A trick Ron had pulled from memories of his previous life. Simple but devastatingly effective. The salt mine was producing 120 pounds of refined salt daily, with over 1,000 pounds already stockpiled. Gray had broken through to mid-rank squire. Then the guards dragged in a man caught at the salt mine. Plain gray clothes, an empty basket on his back, and salt grains stuck to the bottom. He was screaming about gathering firewood when the guards set down what they'd found. A pouch of refined salt and a hand-drawn map of the salt mine, and brick kilns marked with bold crosses. Ron wasn't surprised. He told them to hand the spy over to Dick for questioning, then gave the order: double guards at the salt mine, set up hidden lookout post, and make sure no spy leaves the territory alive. He walked back to the manor and spread a map on his desk. Playing defense just meant getting hit. Whoever was drawing crosses on their map of his land was about to find out who ended up as fertilizer. Dick spent all night on the interrogation and came to Ron at dawn with black circles under his eyes. The man was from Riverside territory, working under a manager named Colin who handled Boris's dirty work. They had been watching from Oak City for half a month before sending 3 groups into the territory. One watching the salt mine, one watching the kilns, one tracking troop movements. The crosses on the map were preparation for arson. Burn the operations down and all development grinds to a halt. Their meeting point was an abandoned hunter's shack 3 miles east of the gravel flats, where they left signals for each other every 2 days. Ron rewarded Dick with 50 silver coins and sent him to rest. Then he called Lauren in and told him to stake out the shack. When the next spy showed up, follow the chain and grab the contact too. Over the next few days, a merchant caravan of about 20 wagons rolled into the territory. The leader was Marco, sharp-eyed and thin, a man in his 40s from the Gray Bear Trading Company based in Oak City. The same company belonging to Marquis Cologne, Ron's patron. Marco took one look at the brick walls, trenches, and drilling guards while pretending not to notice any of it, then got straight to business: the salt mine. Oak City already knew about it. News travels fast in the frontier. The Gray Bear Company wanted to buy refined salt and supply grain, tools, and cloth at good prices. They negotiated for half a day. Ron's salt wasn't cheap coarse stuff. It was rock salt, refined to pure white crystal, noble grade. They settled on to silver coins per pound. He had 1,500 pounds stockpiled and sold it all for 30 gold dragons in one transaction. Not a fortune, but it was steady income, scaled to 300 pounds daily. The salt mine alone could bring in 2,000 gold dragons a year. With money flowing again, he restocked properly: supplies, metal, magic potions, spending several hundred gold dragons. Marco also casually mentioned that Boris had been recruiting heavily and asking about Ron's territory through contacts in Oak City. Ron thanked him for the heads up. After the caravan left, he told Perrin to expand salt production immediately. The administrator's eyes lit up. With steady income, they could buy more serfs and clear another 5,000 acres before winter. After selling the salt, the territory began running more smoothly. Perrin managed accounts, serfs tended crops, guards trained, Dick behaved after his last whipping. Ron started feeling useless sitting in the manor all day. Lauren suggested they go explore the territory's unmapped corners and set up proper patrol routes, so guards could learn the land. 18 of them rode out at dawn with food, water, and sharp eyes. They went north first. The terrain grew rougher with every mile: waist-high grass, scattered rocks, the occasional rabbit bolting from a bush. After 2 hours they hit a mixed forest of oak and pine, too dark to enter carelessly, and skirted the edge northwest. They spotted some goblins in the brush that ducked back into hiding when they saw them. Annoying, but harmless in small numbers, Lauren said. An hour later, climbing high enough to see the ridge marking Thicket Ridge territory to the north, Ron noted that the lord there had arrived 3 months before him, but sent no smoke signals, no signs of life. Beyond that, unclaimed wilderness, and Lauren said orc tribes roamed those lands. Every pioneer territory was the same. The only direction to expand was north, and you had to fight for it. Another day they went west along the Clearwater River and Lauren spotted a shallow crossing. 2 hours upstream, slow current, pebble bottom, easy to wade through. On the far bank, a worn path led through the grass straight to the water's edge. Riverside territory. Boris's people had been using this crossing regularly. Ron stared at that trail for a long time, then told Lauren to mark it on the map. Once patrol teams were running, the spot gets watched constantly. Going southwest one afternoon, they reached a patch of scrubby woods where wild grapevines tangled over dead trees. still carrying shriveled grapes nobody had ever harvested. Ron dismounted to stretch his legs and pushed aside a curtain of low-hanging vines. Something moved under a broad grape leaf. A fat little bug, purple-red about the size of his thumb, with dark markings shaped like tiny clusters of grapes on its back. It flinched from the sudden light and tried to hide. His heart jumped, but his hand stayed steady. He picked it up gently. It squirmed and made a soft humming noise, then gave up and stared at him with two tiny black eyes, its mouth working like it was chewing on nothing. Lauren came up behind him, saw what he was holding, and his eyes went wide. Spirit bug. Ron nodded. He pulled a small piece of jade from his coat and held it near the bug's mouth. The little thing perked right up, grabbed the jade with its legs and started crunching away. While it ate, Ron pricked his finger and dropped blood onto its back. The blood sank in instantly. The bug paused, looked up at him, then went back to eating. But he could feel it now, a faint sense of its mood, its hunger, its contentment. The contract was formed. A grape spirit bug agricultural type. Ron found the companion spirit grass nearby, a dark vine shoot with a finger-length bud, and wrapped it carefully in wet cloth. He placed the bug in a jade box and tucked it inside his coat like something precious. When they got back, Perrin was waiting with a smile. The first batch of magic herbs was ready to harvest. 5 acres of dandelion field, covered in bright yellow flowers. Serfs picking only the fully open blooms while the plant stayed alive to keep producing. The potion maker apprentice estimated the dandelion field alone could produce about 30 bottles of potion per month. Even the cheapest potion costs 1 gold coin on the open market. High quality or elemental ones ran 5 to 10. Between the dandelion bug and the rose bug, Ron finally didn't need to spend a fortune buying potions anymore. His own training could continue, and he could supply his knights with a monthly potion allotment as part of their pay. He told the apprentice to buy whatever materials he needed, perfect his craft, and expect good rewards down the line. Whether he meant it was a question for later. Morning training became routine. Sword drills, battle energy cycling, the refining pot producing liquid from every monster corpse the patrols brought in. His body had grown so used to the stuff that he felt off if he skipped a day. He had barely sat down for breakfast when Lauren burst in. Trouble on the western border. The patrol had found tracks at the most hidden river crossing. 20 to 30 people had crossed from the other side during the night armed, claiming to be a merchant caravan. They had set up camp on his land and weren't leaving. Ron didn't need to think hard about who had sent them. Boris's manager Colin was behind this, a test. Push forward and see how the new Baron reacts. If Ron acted tough, Boris would be more careful next time. If Ron backed down, Boris would know he was weak and push harder. Ron told Lauren to gather 40 men, half veterans, half new recruits, plus Grey, Hart, and the for low-rank squires. He left 40 guards behind in case this was a diversion and rode out. Half an hour later they pulled up 50 paces from the camp, 7 or 8 tents. Horses tied to trees, smoke from a cooking fire. A short middle-aged man with a thin mustache came out of a tent, sword at his hip. His smile froze when he saw Ron's forces, then he plastered it back on and stepped forward. Bowing low, he introduced himself as Colin, a trading manager from Riverside. Said they'd been chasing a wild boar, accidentally crossed the river, and camped when it got dark. Chasing a boar, 30 armed men, using the most hidden crossing. Camping overnight in another lord's territory. Sure. Ron scanned the camp while Colin talked. The men looked casual, but their positioning covered all directions. Several had sharp eyes and quality weapons, trained fighters, not merchants. At least 3 or 4 low-rank squires in the group, and Colin himself was probably mid-rank. These were expendable pawns. If they all died here, Boris wouldn't lose sleep. Ron needed to respond firmly without revealing too much about his own strength. That was the tricky part. He looked at Colin and pointed out that their merchant caravan was quite interesting. Using the most hidden crossing, camping in his territory, still there the next day. Colin offered to pack up and leave immediately, already turning to go. Ron stopped him. Did he forget to bow? By duchy law, commoners show respect to nobles. Out in the frontier, people don't bother. But Ron grabbed onto that technicality and wouldn't let go. He told Lauren to go slap Colin twice. Every mercenary behind Colin drew their swords. Ron's men raised their weapons too. The air went tight enough to snap. Lauren walked up and cracked Colin across the face, left cheek, right cheek, hard enough to make his eyes spin and his mouth bleed. Colin took it without fighting back. He had a mission, and starting a fight here wouldn't serve it. Ron ordered them off his land and told his men that if they didn't comply, kill the leader first. He couldn't actually slaughter the whole group if even one person escaped. Boris would know exactly what he was dealing with. Better to send them home humiliated but alive. On the ride back, Grey asked why Ron let them go. Kill them, and he can't guarantee nobody escapes. One survivor hiding in the grass. And by nightfall, Boris knows the full picture. Next time, he won't send 20 mercenaries. He'll send 100 dressed as bandits. Lauren said what everyone was thinking. This was a bandage, not a cure. Ron nodded but didn't answer. Today he'd held his ground, but not killing them had already told Boris something. What he needed most right now was time, and he was running out of it. He had to find a way to deal with the Boris problem before Boris stopped testing and started attacking for real. Back at the manor that night, Ron called Lauren, Gray, and Hart into his room and shut the door. He laid it out straight. Boris sent people today and got chased off. But this was only round one. Gray asked why Boris was targeting them instead of Thicket Ridge. Hart answered before Ron could. The salt mine. 2,000 gold coins a year. Thicket Ridge had nothing. Green Lake had the port, but Austin was hiding behind castle walls. They were the perfect target, new, not yet established, sitting on a gold mine. Ron told them what he'd learned in his previous life. It's no crime to be innocent, but it's a death sentence to hold treasure you can't protect. And giving Boris the salt mine wouldn't fix anything. Today he wants salt, tomorrow spirit bugs. The day after the whole territory. So he made his decision. He'd strike first tonight, disguised as bandits. But first he had to show them something. He swung his sword at the table corner. Battle energy surging, high-rank squire power. Unmistakable. All three of them went wide-eyed. An 18-year-old high-rank squire. In their minds, that meant a guaranteed future as a full knight. He explained the plan. Cross the river tonight, disguised, and raid one of Boris's farming settlements. He'd use his high-rank strength openly during the attack, but nobody could know it was him. If word spread that an 18-year-old high-rank squire was sitting in a brand new territory, every ambitious lord in the frontier would band together to crush him before he got any stronger. This way, Boris sees that the bandits near his land have a high-rank fighter, which puts pressure on him without provoking an all-out war against Ron specifically. 5 people total: Ron, Lauren, Gray, and a tight-lipped low-rank squires. Small, fast, hard to track. Hart stays behind to guard the manor. They all agreed. What Ron didn't know was that across the river, Boris was having the exact same conversation at the exact same time. In his castle, Boris, his guard Captain Locke, the still bruised Colin, and two mid-rank squires sat around a table going over the same intelligence. Colin reported that Ron had shown a hard attitude with 40 men, but nobody actually fought, so his full strength was unknown. Boris figured the same way Ron would have. The fact that Ron didn't kill his men meant confidence, without overwhelming force. The salt mine was confirmed real, 2,000 gold a year, worth every bit of effort. Boris made his call tonight. Disguised as bandits, he'd go personally with Locke. They'd circle north, sneak into Ron's territory, and burn the farming settlements. If Ron sent men to chase them, Boris would get a look at what his people could do. If Ron didn't chase, he'd know Ron was too weak to respond. 2 lords, same night, same plan, both heading toward each other's land dressed as bandits. That night, no moon, perfect darkness. Ron's group moved west toward the river crossing under cover of dark, running battle energy to see through the night. They had the map Baron Austin had provided, which made navigating riverside territory straightforward. 2 miles past the river, they spotted Firelight, a small outpost with a watchtower, a few tents. Soldiers drinking around a campfire. They went around it. An hour later, they reached one of Boris's farming villages. 2 guards on the watchtower, looking the wrong way. Lauren's arrows punched through both their throats before they could react. Ron vaulted the 2-meter wall, battle energy surging, and threw open the gate. A low-rank squire charged at him with his weapon up. One swing sent him flying. He didn't get back up. The other soldiers saw what happened, turned white, and ran. Lauren and Gray torched the granary. Dry straw caught instantly, flames lighting up half the sky. The serfs dropped to their knees, paralyzed with fear. Ron let the fleeing soldiers go on purpose. He wanted them alive to report what they saw. The whole raid took less than 15 minutes. Before leaving, he planted one thing, a plain sword with a strip of cloth wrapped around the handle cloth. From his own training yard, a small breadcrumb, enough to make Boris wonder. They disappeared into the dark, and then everything changed. Behind them, alarm bells rang across the village. They were moving fast through scrubby woods on the way home when Gray stopped and pointed east, toward Ron's own territory. Fire, not a small one, a wide glow on the horizon, right where Black Rye Village should be. Nobody spoke. They broke into a run, crashing through the grass. The closer they got, the clearer the flames became. By the time they crested the last hill, Black Rye Village was burning hard. Boris had the exact same plan on the exact same night. They had passed within miles of each other in the dark without knowing it. At dawn, Ron changed out of his disguise and got the damage report. 8 guards dead. The settlement managers killed first, so nobody organized firefighting. Half the serfs had scattered into the wilderness. The buildings were almost completely destroyed. Ron sat back in his chair and looked at the morning light coming through the window. He burned one of Boris's farms and killed a low-rank squire. Boris burned his black rye village and killed 8 guards. Neither had gained an advantage. But one thing was crystal clear. Boris was just as ruthless and cunning as he was. Ron laughed to himself. Life out here had just gotten a lot more interesting. Meanwhile, in Boris's castle, the damage report from Riverside was equally grim. The northeast farm hit, granary burned to nothing, low-rank squire killed with a single sword strike, and surviving soldiers confirming the attacker's battle energy. As high-rank squire level without question. Boris's face changed when he heard that, a high-rank squire. He'd gone to burn Ron's settlement and found nobody home because that fighter was at his place, doing the exact same thing. No looting, just arson and a deliberate message. His captain Locke suggested switching targets to Thicket Ridge instead. Boris didn't answer. Ron stood in the ruins of Black Rye Village, charwood still smoking, half-collapsed walls leaning at ugly angles. He doubled the death pay for the fallen guards and sent it back to their families. He wanted everyone to know that dying under his command meant their families got taken care of. He ordered bricks from the kilns, timber from the northern forest. Workers pulled from the other for settlements. Black Rye Village would be rebuilt in 10 days. He also promoted capable serfs to replace the dead managers and told the rest that whoever worked hardest would get the next manager position. That lit a fire under them faster than any whip. Back at the manor, he laid out the new defensive plan: pull back, tighten up, double the watch at the river crossings, expand patrol range, no heroics. Then he kept Lauren behind and put a box on the table. 30 bottles of rose potion, the first real harvest from the magic herb fields. He told Lauren straight, the territory needed a second high-rank squire who could fight in the open. Someone whose strength wasn't a secret like his. How long to break through? 1 month with enough potions, Lauren said. 1 month it is. Starting today. Lauren drops all other duties and focuses entirely on training. The potion field's entire output goes to him first. Lauren bowed deeply and left with the box. Ron stood at the window looking west. 1 month. Could Boris give him that much time? The answer came the very next morning. Perrin knocked on the door with a strange look on his face. Riverside Territory had sent people over with grain, condolence grain, and a message from Boris himself saying, yesterday's merchant caravan incident was a misunderstanding. That bandits had roamed the area and both sides suffered, and he hoped they could be good neighbors. Ron almost laughed out loud. The man who burned his village 12 hours ago was now sending sympathy gifts and talking about friendship. He understood exactly what Boris was doing. Relax the pressure, make Ron think it was over, wait for him to get sloppy, then strike for real. He told Perrin to keep the grain and send the messengers away with pleasantries. Boris was playing the long game. So was he. What Boris didn't know is that while he was spreading word about the salt mine to every neighboring lord, hoping someone else would take a bite first, so he could watch from behind, Ron was pouring every resource into Lauren's breakthrough. He pulled all the knights back into the manor and concentrated his force. 2 men standing at their windows, looking toward each other across the river, both smiling, both sharpening their knives. 1 month. Then they'd see who was the hunter and who was the prey. A week later, Black Rye Village was almost rebuilt and trouble started again. Gray reported 7 or 8 people in mercenary clothes hanging around the salt mine, poking through the tree line for half a day before disappearing. Then Austin's messenger arrived from Green Lake with condolence supplies. And the real reason for his visit, Boris had been telling every neighboring lord about the salt mine. He painted Ron as a new lord who might not last, which meant the territory was suddenly crawling with strangers from every direction. Boris wasn't going to attack directly anymore. He'd rung the dinner bell for everyone else. That night, barely asleep, someone came pounding on Ron's door. The salt operation was under attack. By the time he got there, it was over. 7 or 8 attackers had tried to set fires and sabotage equipment. Guards caught them, killed 3, but the rest escaped. For guards dead, over a dozen serfs dead, tools wrecked, the salt operation shut down for repairs. No way to identify who sent them. It could have been any neighboring lord. Ron ordered the mine workers pulled back until things were settled, then had the enemy bodies quietly fed into the refining pot. First time refining human bodies. He tested the results on his men's soup first before using it himself. The next day, Stone Creek Territory showed up. A slick young man with his chin in the air claiming to represent Baron Peter, 3rd son of Count Red Maple. His proposal: let Stone Creek buy into the salt mine, provide manpower and trade routes. Split profits 50-50. 50-50 for Ron's mine, Ron's salt, Ron's workers. He smiled and asked how much support the third son of a count actually got from his father. Clearly not much, given that he was here begging at Ron's table. The manager turned red and left without another word. Then 2 more delegations arrived. Then in the afternoon, 3 more. By end of day, every single lord he shared a border with had sent someone. Not one missing. All wanting a piece. Ron smiled through every meeting, promised nothing, and made mental notes. Boris's plan had worked perfectly. He scattered blood in the water, and every shark in the area was circling. He silently promised himself he'd repay all this neighborly warmth one day. With interest. 3 days after the salt mine shut down, the harassment got worse. Gray found one of his wood-cutting serfs with his throat cut in the eastern forest. A threatening note pinned to the body. That same night, someone shot fire arrows into Cattle Village, burning to empty cabins. Gray was furious and wanted to hit back. Ron told him to stay calm. He pulled everyone out of the salt mine on purpose. Let them think he was scared. Boris had spread the word perfectly. Everyone heard about bandits burning Black Rye Village. But nobody heard about Ron hitting Boris's farm in return. Every neighbor thought he was a soft target who just hid behind manor walls. Fine, he'd play the part. Act weak, stay quiet, and wait for the first idiot to overcome it. That idiot turned out to be Baron Peter of Stone Creek. While Ron checked on Lauren in closed training, 10 days in, needing a couple more weeks, Peter grew bolder by the day. Ron slipped Lauren 3 bottles of concentrated refining liquid disguised as high-grade potions, and told him to break through in 3 days. Meanwhile, Peter's people called Ron a coward baron who got lucky. Then one of Peter's men suggested the big move: just take the salt mine. It was shut down, nobody there. Walk right in and start producing. If the coward doesn't dare fight, the mine is theirs. Peter sent his manager with 30+ guards and nearly 500 serfs. They marched into Ron's salt mine like they owned the place, set up cooking pots, lit fires, and started boiling salt on day 1. Ron's patrol watched from a distance and reported back while he was sparring with Lauren. Lauren had broken through to high-rank squire. Ron was quiet for a moment when he heard about Peter's men at the mine. Then he laughed. Time to close the net. Riverbend territory now had the high-rank squires, in this stretch of the frontier. That put them near the top. 3 nights after Lauren's breakthrough, Ron gathered every night, and most of the guards. Masks on, armor on. They crept to the salt mine under moonlight. The place was wide open, 33 guards, most asleep in makeshift shelters. Sentries nodding off around a campfire. Ron gave the order. They rushed in. The sentries died before they knew what happened. Throats cut clean. The rest stumbled out of their shelters into chaos. Then someone unexpected appeared, a middle-aged man whose battle energy flared bright. As he cut down one of Ron's armored soldiers with a single strike, a high-rank squire, Peter's personal guard captain. Ron called Lauren over. 2 against 1. Ron's raw strength was absurd even for a high-rank fighter, and Lauren's experience covered Ron's gap in combat technique. Together they cornered the man fast. He tried to run, tried to trade his life for one of theirs. When all out in a desperate final burst, Ron hit him with everything he had and broke him. They finished it. After that, they swept through the camp. To high-rank squires against common soldiers is like cutting vegetables. The screaming didn't last long. When it was over, 1 high-rank squire dead, 5 prisoners taken, and Peter of Stone Creek had just lost the most important piece on his board. He wanted the salt mine. He paid for it with blood. Interrogation results came quickly. The high-rank squire killed was Peter's only high-rank fighter. Peter had sent him to hold the salt mine because other lords kept sniffing around. That was a gift. Peter still had 3 mid-rank squires and about 7 or 8 low-rank ones back home, plus 130 soldiers. He came to the frontier with over 10,000 gold dragons, but half was already spent building his castle. The reason he dared grab the mine was simple. Everyone thought Ron was a pushover. He was wrong. Ron looked at the captured serfs and made his decision. Load up. They were raiding Stone Creek immediately, before Peter even knew what happened at the salt mine. 40 mounted riders on the road by midday, same crew, same masks, moving fast with no rest. They hit one of Stone Creek's farming villages, swept in fast, cut down the few guards, and rounded up every serf. Half an hour in and out, grain, livestock, tools. 300 serfs tied together and marched south. When Stone Creek's reinforcements arrived, they found nothing but empty buildings and boot prints. Peter heard the news while sitting in his study trying to figure out his next move, and nearly exploded. He pulled everyone behind his manor walls. He wrote two things: a letter to his father begging for reinforcements, and a peace letter to Ron full of sweet talk about brotherhood and misunderstandings. Ron read the peace letter and laughed, then told his men to get a good night's sleep. Tomorrow they'd go again. When the next morning scouting found Peter had pulled all his people inside overnight, Ron gave the order: if there are no people to grab, burn it instead. His men threw torches into 3 farming settlements by noon, black smoke visible for miles. And Peter sat behind his fortified walls and never sent a single person out. By afternoon, Peter's messenger came with threats about Count Red Maple's reinforcements. Ron laughed and told him they had the wrong person. They were bandits, never heard of any baron. Then he switched to a friendly tone and pointed out that reinforcements from the duchy's heartland would take 1 month at minimum, maybe 4. By the time soldiers arrived, what territory would be left to save? His terms: if Peter kindly returned to spirit bugs that bandits had apparently lost nearby, this whole misunderstanding could end. The messenger left on wobbly legs. Peter agreed to everything eventually: 2,000 serfs, 50,000 pounds of grain, 300 sets of farming tools. He figured he was just buying time until his father's soldiers arrived. Then he'd make Ron pay it all back with interest. The deliveries started immediately: 500 serfs on the first day, all 2,000 arriving over 5 days along with the grain and tools. The salt mine reopened. Production hit 300 pounds a day and climbed higher. But what happened next nobody expected. Ron went back on the deal before the ink had dried. He never actually received any goods, he told Lauren with a straight face. He didn't see anything delivered. Did Lauren? Lauren grinned. Not a thing. Masks on again. Same routine: Lauren in front playing bandit chief, Ron hidden in the crowd. But this time, another group of riders appeared on the horizon heading the same way. 50-something men, a big figure hiding in the group with old leather armor and a wrapped face. Boris. Both groups stopped a few hundred paces apart, sizing each other up. Their leaders rode out to talk at 50 paces, voices disguised. Together they had nearly 100 men, and for high-rank squires between them. One target: Peter's manor. Peter was eating lunch when the alarm went up. He ran to the ramparts and saw a black wave of riders pouring toward him. The enchanted crossbows dropped a few men, but there were too many. For high-rank fighters hit the walls simultaneously. They vaulted over, smashed the watchtowers, kicked the main gate open. The whole thing took less than a minute. Peter was dragged out shaking, tried the noble card: you know who I am. I'm Count Red Maple's son, and got a fist in the face for it. Both groups swept through the manor filling carts with grain, tools, gold, silver. Then they found the spirit bug room. 9 jade boxes neatly ranged on shelves. Both groups squared off at the door, hands on swords. Neither side could get full value without the other. Ron's side had Peter as a prisoner, and spirit bugs are bound by contract. They were useless without the owner releasing them or dying. After negotiation, they split the spirit bugs evenly. 3 magic herb-type bugs split 1 each per side. Agricultural bugs divided fairly. Ron chose the damaged herb bug, even weakened. It had value he could work with. Then came Peter. Locke threatened torture. Lauren helpfully described what chilly water felt like on raw skin. Peter, terrified and broken, asked what it would take to save his life. Release the spirit bug contracts, they told him, and he'd be released. Account's son. Nobody wants to anger Red Maple over nothing. Peter believed them. He released all the contracts one by one. The moment the last bond was severed, Locke ran him through. Then Locke stared at Lauren until he stepped forward and put a blade in Peter too, making sure both sides had blood on their hands. Ron watched from the crowd, silently mourning his generous big brother Peter. Such a pure and trusting soul. Finding another mark like him wouldn't be easy. Both groups divided the big hall: serfs, grain, and livestock. Then Boris's men loaded their last cart and disappeared into the wilderness. Ron cursed Boris the whole way home for all the battlefield bodies he had to leave behind. Wasted material for the refining pot. He's a petty man. He put that loss on Boris's tab. Back at the manor, Perrin inventoried everything for spirit bugs contracted. 1,000 more serfs, 3 enchanted crossbows from Peter's collection, roughly 2,000 gold dragons, piles of grain, livestock, tools, weapons, and barrels of wine. This single haul saved 2 months of development. Something clicked in Ron's head standing over all that loot. The slow, careful path of farming and saving was too cautious. He needed to think bigger. He sent Hart to Oak City with all available cash to buy nothing but magic potions. He wasn't going to play the patient development game against Boris. With newer spirit bugs, he could support more knights. Time to build strength fast. Then came something none of them expected. The damaged lily spirit bug from Peter's collection had been lying in the spirit room barely moving. Its spirit grass half destroyed, the little creature itself wilting. Ron went to it alone that evening with a bottle of diluted refining liquid. He dripped it onto the spirit grass. Something amazing happened. The grass roots came alive, drinking in the liquid hungrily. A green shoot pushed out from the damaged area, healing itself. The bug perked up and crawled to the wound, spitting on it in some natural healing response. He kept feeding liquid, bottle after bottle, for half an hour straight, to full bottles used. Finally, the bug lifted off and flew slow circles around its grass, sprinkling green light like dust. Through the contract bond, Ron felt what it was doing, a desperate attempt to evolve. The bug had decided to risk death for a chance to become a small sprite. He kept dripping liquid and watched. Then the bug landed back on its grass and slowly wrapped itself in a cocoon. It stopped moving. Whether it lived or died now was up to the bug itself. He kept watching. Days passed. Every morning, no change. Every evening, keep waiting. Then one night, while he was planning construction at his desk, the contract bond suddenly pulsed with agitation. He ran to the spirit room. The cocoon had cracked. Pale green light flickered through the gap, pulsing like a heartbeat. He held his breath and watched. The crack widened. A tiny head pushed through, a little face with a small flower growing from the top. Then the whole body emerged. She had evolved. A small sprite, looking like a doll the size of his palm, with 2 pairs of transparent wings on her back. She spotted him, buzzed over, circled him twice like she was showing off, then landed on his shoulder. The big eyes stared at him. She tilted her head and made a tiny chirping sound. Through the contract, he felt pure, clear affection. He held out his hand and she crawled into his palm, nuzzling his finger. He named her Bella. She seemed to understand, bouncing twice with excitement. By morning, the whole territory knew. Hart said he'd lived his whole life and never seen a spirit bug evolve. Only heard stories about it. A small sprite lives 50 years, far longer than a spirit bug's 15 to 20. She covers 10 acres of magic herb field at double the bug's quality, producing ingredients for high-grade potions. That changed everything for his training program, and Hart broke through to high-rank squire not long after, walking out of his training room one evening twice as strong as before, kneeling in front of Ron to announce it. 3 high-rank squires in River Bend. In this stretch of the frontier, nobody could match that. The territory now had close to 6,000 people, over 130 guards, more than 10 low-rank squires, over 10,000 acres of farmland, and 7 spirit bugs. Ron's combat strength was now among the strongest in this part of the frontier. Then Hart reported a serpent tribe about 20 miles north, roughly 200 of them, half elderly and children, with 70 or 80 real fighters. Ron filed it away. He'd wait until his night roster grew, then deal with them properly. In the middle of all this building and growing, something none of Ron's careful planning had accounted for arrived in Green Lake Territory's port. A young woman named Lily Moonlight Rose was hiding in a second-floor room, her younger sister Cecilia asleep in her arms, daughter of a marquis from a duchy destroyed in war, running for her life, hunted by enemies. Her group had shrunk from over 40 people to just a dozen. She was heading for her uncle, Count Birch, and the Black Iron Duchy. 2 more legs of the journey, and she'd be safe. Ron's spy at Green Lake's port noticed something. A group claiming to be fur traders had arrived, done some business, and left. Then another ship docked with new arrivals asking questions about the first group. Someone was being chased, someone with secrets. He rode out with Lauren, Hart, and several squires, circling toward Green Lake in the northern wilderness. That afternoon they spotted the pursuers from the tree line, over 20 riders, well armed, moving fast. He left horses with the squire, and they followed on foot through the cold late autumn wind. At nightfall, about 20 miles south of Green Lake, campfire light appeared ahead. He watched through a telescope. The fleeing group had made camp. Their guard captain was leaning on a rock, face pale, bloody bandages seeping through his chest wrappings. An old butler sat beside a young woman comforting a little girl of 7 or 8. Then the attack came. Arrow through his sentry's throat, black figures pouring from the darkness. The injured guard captain surged up to spite his wounds, but the enemy had the high-rank fighters and he was already losing. Ron watched the young woman shove her little sister into a female guard's arms and order them to run. Once the child was away, the woman began casting, pale blue light gathering at her fingertips. She threw up a milky white shield they couldn't break through, pulled out magic scrolls rivaling a high-rank squire's strike, and actually turned the fight into a stalemate. Impressive woman. But Ron wasn't watching the battle. He intercepted the fleeing child and her guard. The little girl, desperate, tears streaming, begged him to save her sister and promised anything in payment. His price, he told her, her sister herself. Could she agree to that on her sister's behalf? The girl's face went blank. She looked toward the distant firelight where her sister fought. Then, with an expression far too old for her age, she nodded. That was the moment he stood up and signaled. Lauren, Hart, and the squires rising together. Masks on, eyes showing, 12 shadows burst from the darkness and hit the battlefield. By dawn, both enemy high-rank fighters lay dead. Lily Moonlight Rose stood exhausted but alive in the ruins of her camp. The little girl Cecilia had fallen asleep in her arms, and Ron Broccoli, Baron of River Bend, was already thinking about what came next.